Hi everybody and welcome to Scamper Audio. My name's Steve and I'm very pleased to be joined by two of the greatest guitar players working in the world today, Mr. Martin Miller from Germany and Mr. Tom Quayle from just up the road from us here. Welcome guys.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have these two. It's been great listening to them. They've been doing some playing and some warming up, so I've got a few questions to ask them. First one that struck me earlier was, had you two heard of each other before you met? Had you?
Before we met in person, yes.
So that was the MySpace days, I believe, right?
We're old, or I'm old.
I'm old too. So we're not much different when it comes to age. I mean, I think it was the MySpace days, and it was during the launch of the first Guitar Idol competition, and he submitted his take to it. And when I saw it, I was so genuinely blown away that I started texting him on MySpace and stalking him for advice. And
we used to hang out on the John Petrucci forum when forums were a thing.
Remember
back
that?
In the day. Not bulletin boards, but forums back in the day. And people used to upload clips of, in the old days where it was totally acceptable to sit on your bed, have one of those like crappy 480p webcams recording you. I used to record, I had the snooker on in the background, all sorts. And nobody cared, it was all about the playing, and we used to exchange clips and stuff, and it was the kind of golden days of that. And then we got booked for the same gig in Bergamo, just randomly. Had a jam in my hotel room or your hotel room beforehand, and just thought, well, why don't we just do this as a duo? So I think we actually played Travels and some other bits and pieces. I don't remember what we played.
Stuff we played between you and me, actually, like some stuff that we even play today.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So there's a long line of German guitar players in the rock field, going back to my early days in the 70s, Uli Roth and Michael Schenker and people like that.
Correct.
I can't think of many jazz fusion players from that. So was there anyone in Germany that influenced you? Is there anyone I wouldn't have heard of, or in that sort of fusion?
That's a good question. You're putting me on the spot here. I'm not sure. Is Susan Weinert Austrian or German?
Don't know.
She's freaking incredible.
Is Wolfgang Muschspiel's German, right?
Muschspiel, yeah. He's German.
An amazing guitar
Also,
player.
he could be Austrian, but I think he's German. Yeah.
The reason for asking is I'm interested in the transition. Most guys start out rock, yeah? Very few people go straight, Martin Taylor maybe go straight into jazz, but very few people start out. But I'm interested in at what point you started to move away from just the straight ahead rock thing, and your ear started to get caught with things that are a little more harmonically sophisticated, shall we say.
Go on, sorry, you go first.
For me, it's kind of funny because you say that you moved away from rock. I did move away from rock, but I've come back full circle on it, if I'm being honest. Like, I don't consider myself a jazz guitar player.
Nor do I.
At all. No. Barely a fusion guitar player. Nowadays I'm playing rock covers. I write rock songs and I sing "Baby" and "Yeah, Yeah, Yeah," and I'm really enjoying myself doing that.
Ticking all the boxes.
I did get distracted from rock music for a little bit, but I've come full circle. I feel like, although I do cherish and value that time I had spent away from rock music a lot because it broadened my horizons. And my personal entry drug was Mike Stern.
All right.
I think we're lucky in the guitar world because there's a very easy link between blues and rock, overdriven tones, and then you've got a whole generation of guitar players like Scott Henderson, Mike Stern, that whole generation of guys, Frank Gambale, who took that sound and made it very easy for us to transition both tonally and as in the tone of the guitar, and also tonally as in harmonically into that world. So for me, it was those guys and Alan Holdsworth, all the usual. I'm all the cliches that we all are. I didn't listen to anybody nobody else. I didn't find anybody unique or anything. I listened to all the normal people.
So where did you start to get your information from? Martin, when you decided you wanted to?
So that would have been late 90s, early 2000s, right? And it was dial-up internet in my case. So I didn't have a proper connection at home because I was living in a village in East Germany. And I think some people thought they were being smart by putting fiber cables into the infrastructure at the time, which no internet provider did anything with. So that dial-up internet, it would take me probably 2 days to download a 3-minute live video of somebody from Kazaa or Morpheus or any of those platforms. So what would happen is I would download a 5-minute clip from a Paul Gilbert instructional video, and that would set my parents back 20 Deutschmark or euros because of how long it took to download that. I would get in trouble for that, but then I would have the clip and I would watch it literally 100 times over and absorb every little detail. And I feel like, in a way, people nowadays have almost the reverse problem. The access to information is so easy, so immediate, but also it's unfiltered. Whereas with me, I had this one clip, and that's what I stuck by. That was my only source of information. I had a great teacher as well. Went to conservatory, that helped. Although his type of tuition was very, very old school. Like I was playing brass etudes and stuff like that to learn big band articulation, those types of things. Stuff that was helpful, but at the time I wasn't really that interested in, if I'm being honest. So yeah, I would hold on to every little nugget that I could find somewhere, whatever way that was.
So who was the first person do you remember a point where I remember listening to Tommy Bolin on the Spectrum album, That's How Old I Am, and thinking wow, that's different now. That isn't Deep Purple. That isn't, that is different. Do you remember ever picking up on that and thinking that is?
Yeah, I mean, mine's a little bit of a cliche in a way. This will be a guitar player thing. Up and down the land, you ask them, they'll say the same thing. It was Under a Glass Moon, John Petrucci. Right. And I think I must have listened to it a million times. In fact, I liked it so much. Everybody came to my parents' house when I was a kid. I was about 15. I made them listen to it too. I was like, because I was convinced that they would get the same visceral reaction I did out of it. Of course, they didn't. They thought it was awful. But for me, that was something where I just couldn't stop thinking about it at all for days and days and days and weeks and weeks and weeks. It's the only one I still know, actually. That's how much of a thing. Like 43 years old, so over 20 years later, and I can still remember how to play that solo because it made such an impact on me. Yeah. So yeah, that's the one for me.
My probably most religious experience when it comes to perceiving music, right, was probably Deep Purple in Plauen. I'd have to check when that exactly was, maybe 97, 98, something like that. So relatively early Steve Morse era. And I was going to that show, not knowing who Steve Morse was. I thought Richard Blackmore was still in the band. Like, how would I know, right? There was no, I didn't have access to internet. I wasn't informed of what was going on. I just knew Deep Purple from the hits that everybody knows. And I thought Blackmore was in the band. And I saw Steve Morse play, and it melted my face completely on every single level. There was actually 3 bands opening for Deep Purple that night, and each one of them had a better guitar player than the next. And I was like, wow! And it kept ramping up, and guitar players kept getting better. And then Steve Morse came on. Literally could not believe what I was seeing. I came home. My mom was asking me, "And how was it?" I just didn't even know what to answer. I was like, I don't know. It's just everything. That's that moment where your life gets completely reframed. Yeah. Everything you knew is now in question.
Yeah, that's absolutely perfect. Yeah. Thank you. That's exactly the answer I was looking for. So I know your dad is an incredible guitar player. Did you come from a musical family?
Mom sang in church choir. Father knows a couple open chords and had a nylon acoustic guitar. And he's a big music lover. Had a record collection. He introduced me to music as a whole, as a concept, as a listener, as an enjoyer, not necessarily as a musician.
Yeah, I mean, guitar was constantly in my house. Everybody in my family plays guitar to a reasonable level. My dad, as you know, particularly well. So it was kind of like, it was fated by the gods that I was supposed to play guitar, I think. But I just became obsessed with it. Unlike my brothers and sister, I became obsessed, whereas they played other instruments. Guitar was the one that was really my, obsession.
It's difficult sometimes to explain to people about that level of obsession, where you can get in your bedroom at 7 at night and next thing it's midnight and it's like, what happened? Because
this is the funny thing, because people always say, this is a question you get a lot, we might get it tomorrow, like, practice regimes. How do I practice? What do I practice? And it's like, I never had that question in my head because I picked up the guitar and was so obsessed, and I'm sure you were the same. We have to answer this question a lot. It's like, no, I didn't have a practice routine, still haven't to this day. Pick up the guitar because I'm obsessed with something. It might have been fretboard knowledge, it might have been a particular harmonic thing, it might have been a particular technique thing, but it was never in question as to what to practice or why I was practicing or how long I should practice for. It was just obsession, basically.
Yeah, that's almost like that gym mentality. How long do I need to practice for? Well, like there was no stopping me. Quite frankly, like you would have to force the guitar out of my hands at some point.
No, I absolutely get that. So there's no denying when we listen to you two that there is a good degree of harmonic knowledge there, jazz knowledge, whether you want to acknowledge it as that.
Yeah.
So where did you get your actual basis from, your jazz education, shall we say?
I was lucky to have a teacher early on in conservatory that is like pre-college in Germany. We call it conservatory. I think it's different here.
It is, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so that's pre-college. And he was somebody who was really, like, he was not the greatest guitar player per se, but he could play piano, could play some trumpet, some saxophone. He could read music. He could write arrangements for big band. He could do all of those things like a really well-rounded musician. And he just taught me all those skills that are not specific to the guitar, that are specific to music in general.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, again, reading, listening, identifying intervals, doing basic arrangements, these types of things. Yeah, he introduced me to those ideas, and then I refined them in college.
Right. And Tom, you were at Leeds, I think.
Yeah, I did the jazz degree at Leeds College of Music, so I was there for 3 years, and it was great. But I would say, not to throw Leeds, well, it doesn't exist in the form it existed back then anyway, but you did really have to teach yourself quite a lot, which was fine because there was a very extensive library. But what really happened was you were around very like-minded individuals. So I remember one summer, for instance, there's an amazing guitar player called Tam de Villiers who lives in Paris, incredible jazz guitar player. He was at Leeds the final year. He was in his third year when I was in my first year. And in the transition between my second and third year, where I felt in the second year, I was like, I don't really know. Like, I couldn't use melodic minor properly. I didn't really understand a lot of stuff beyond 251s. He taught me a ton of stuff. So you were doing this exchange thing where people were exchanging information and you could jam all the time. So I jammed with him a lot and he taught me tons of stuff. And of course I had good teachers as well. But really I learned most of my stuff in the third year where I became obsessed with guys like Kenny Wheeler and, those kind of modern jazz composers and learnt tons of stuff there. It was a good experience, but I don't want to give the impression that by going to Leeds College of Music, I automatically was instilled with all of this information. You had to do a lot of work yourself as well.
Yeah. No, and it's funny you say that. I remember the first time ever being shown how a melodic minor can be used over a blues, where over a one you'd put it from the fifth, over a four chord you'd put it from the root, and over the five you'd put it from half a step up from the fifth or something. I'm thinking, this is it. Yep. This is the stuff I want to know.
Yep. And that's where the obsession starts to build.
Yeah, that's it. Because then you start thinking, and then you realise how far there is to go. So, another question on that then, what do you listen to? So for example, a lot of guitar players, when they listen to jazz, also listen to sax players because they're single line, there's no chords.
I was going to say podcasts.
We'll probably have the same answer here. I mean, it's one of those things where, I remember my mum always used to tell me she worked in an ice cream van and never wanted to eat ice cream ever again.
Right.
Don't actually listen to that much music. And it's a horrible answer. I don't want to give it as the answer, but I also don't want to lie and just make something up. So these days, I mean, if I'm absolutely brutally honest, I have a 7-year-old daughter and the vast majority of the music that plays in my head is Disney songs in the car, and I'm not trying to be facetious or silly.
I get it.
That is the truth.
Yeah.
But, it's all music, and it's actually, some of that stuff is incredible. It's got incredible arrangements, incredible production, incredible writing. So it's all fine. It's not like it's giving me some kind of weird Disney disease.
I like to try which with the 25 writers did which part.
Right, yeah. Well, you could play games with it, yeah, for sure. And sometimes I do stupid musical things, like I'll try and figure the chord progression out in my head while we're driving along and stuff. But yeah, I don't these days sit down. I don't buy albums anymore, and I don't really, like, I have friends who went to LCM that I still am friends, Leeds College of Music, and the hardcore jazzers, and they still buy albums the way I used to buy albums when I would go to like Borders or Virgin Megastore and actually buy the CD, study the inlay card. I have friends who still do that stuff. I don't do that anymore. I don't really listen to music that much. I listen to audiobooks and podcasts because music is what I do for a living. So, yeah.
Is that the same with you, Matt?
Kind of the same. In a way that I don't really seek out new music that much. If it presents itself to me, I'm very happy. Like on the drive here, I was spending 4 hours in the car today, and Fen from Laney has impeccable music taste. We just listened through his Spotify playlist. Was so much phenomenal stuff there. I actually wrote some down. I'm gonna backtrack it. But to be fully honest, I do music all day, every day. So I don't really have the need. I feel like I have to have other hobbies to balance that out. With that said, I'm still 100% obsessed about music. Less so about the guitar in general, specifically.
Same here.
I really love music. I love to sing. I love to produce. I love to write. I love to make videos. I love to do stuff in music that is not necessarily related to playing guitar.
Yeah, I absolutely get that.
I still like guitar too, but it comes and goes. Like, been really working my voice in the past couple of months, and there will be a time where
you've got a fair set of pipes on you. You've been putting these things out with your session band, which are really pretty cool.
Which is very important for me. It's like because I have to. I actually, the session band I like so much because I can use all my skills in music, not just the guitar playing.
It sounds cool. You've jammed on that once or twice.
Yeah. That was a while ago now.
He was our first guest.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah,
2017.
when the original guitars came out. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, that band's insane, absolutely ridiculous. And like you say, it gives you an outlet, which is not just guitar.
Yes.
And I mean, although I don't, do a lot of live playing and stuff, we do all these masterclasses and clinics and that kind of thing. That's enough for me. That's fine. I'm happy with that. Guitar is less of an obsession in the way it used to be, because you get to a point where, like, inevitably, you start to develop other interests. Like, I've got super into analog synths recently. Spent far too much money on them, and that's kind of a sound I've been listening to a lot of. Bands like the Midnight, for example, getting into that kind of sound, and your ear just goes on a direction. And what I've learned is to just follow that, because if you try and resist and you say, "Oh no, I'm supposed to be this, I have to be this," and you have this idea of what you are in your head, it never goes anywhere good. You just end up being annoyed by the fact that you're not enjoying yourself anymore.
We'll have to hook you up with tickets for the Radar Festival.
Yes,
which we sponsor,
that'd be amazing.
because,
I would love to see the Midnight Live.
headline.
Yeah.
It's funny, we got into analog synths at the same time, completely independent of each other. Sometimes we go for months without talking to each other, and then we have very intensive conversations, right? And yeah, we started buying analog synths at the same time. And we had this conversation the other day. Like, I'm writing my next record at the minute, and I'm pretty far in. I'm like the writing is like 90% done, maybe 85%. This flagship tune that I think is one of the strongest on the record. Really want to do a video for it. Really want to put it out there. And I'm currently still struggling with, do you have to put a guitar solo in there? Because there is no need for a guitar solo. The song is genuinely complete without a guitar solo. But I also know that my audience's retention, I can see the stats, right? It goes way up when there's a guitar solo in any of the videos. So it's I also have to accept that people perceive me primarily as a guitar player, and I have to make myself known as a songwriter over time. And you cannot be known for too many things at the same time. So yeah, that's something that I've been not struggling with, something that I'm figuring out. I don't like the word struggle, because I prefer it's like a puzzle that I'm trying to solve.
I had a similar thing a few years ago, and actually ended up doing an album with MIDI guitar, so that it didn't sound like guitar, and so that I could explore exactly what you're saying. Once the MIDI was down, then I could interfere with the filters and gunners, whatever else, and that was creatively interesting. But that's interesting. I want to come back to the education thing, because as we were talking before, you both at one point mentioned intervals. You have an app called Solo, which I think is on its second iteration now.
It is.
And you have a specific way of viewing the guitar neck. Now, you also happen to be one of these strange people that don't believe in a regular guitar tuning, so maybe you should say something about that beforehand. But do you want to talk us through how you perceive the guitar neck?
Sure. Actually, in many ways, we're quite similar. It's just that the actual process of arranging information is different. But yeah, first of all, I'm not tuned standard. I am for the lowest four strings, so it's E, A, D, G, and then C and F. So those two, as you know, are tuned up a semitone. So it's all fourths all the way down, like a 6-string bass. Effectively, the way I'm thinking about the fretboard is I'm always aware of how every single note that I play relates to the root note of the chord or scale I'm playing over. So I'm thinking in terms of numbers, not note names. So let's say I was playing over a G minor 7 or G minor, whatever G minor kind of chord. I've got a G minor 11. I find root notes. So they say there's a G here, one here, one here, one here, one here. They're all over the fretboard. And from any of those given Gs, I'm thinking about, rather than G to D, I'm thinking about 1 and then 5, or 1 and then flat 3. So, and I think of those numbers, well, I don't think of them that way, this is just standard parlance, they're functions. So a 5 is a function against a root note. That note functions as a 5. So here's 1. This note here functions as 5 against that note. And if you play it an octave lower, it's still a 5. Okay, so that's how I'm thinking. Yeah, so basically what I've done is I've catalogued from any given root note what those intervals or those functions look like visually within 1 octave above and below that root note. So to do this really quickly, like a flat 3 or a minor third, you can play it from G like that, 3 frets higher than the root note on the same string. That works. Doesn't matter where you play it. You can do this shape. This is in the above or ascending from 1 to flat 3, which is a string higher and 2 frets back. And And this is where this tuning comes in useful, because you don't have to adjust the shape for the tuning. And I've learned what all of those functions look like, whether it's a 2, a 3, a flat 3, a 4, a 6, whatever.
And are you thinking of them as they function? Are you thinking as in terms of cadences? As that
Well, no. Just how not in terms of a chord progression. I think of harmony, and this is where we're exactly the same.
Right.
Think of harmony, not Hermione. Hermione. I think of harmony in vertical slices. Right. So if I was playing over a 2-5-1, like 2-5-1 in the key of F, whatever, I'm thinking about the G minor 7. So I find G's on the fretboard wherever I'm going to play. It's up to me. I might not play the G, but I'm visualizing visually where are all of those intervals from that G. So G is my visualization reference point, and I can see the 5. I can see the flat 3 in all of its permutations, an octave above or below that root note. And if you do this, like I can see the 5, I can see the flat 7, so on and so forth. And I'm just updating where my root note is as I move around the fretboard. So if I was to play a line like... for a 2-5-1, as I'm going through that line, I'm just visually updating. So I started on this G, I can visualize the 1, the 2, the flat 3, the 5, the 1, the 2, the flat 3, and then I move to the C7. Here's the C. I go 1, flat 9, 1, flat 7, sharp 5, 3, sharp 9. I'm constantly updating my root notes, and I know what those intervals or functions look like from any of the given root notes within one octave above or below. And if you do it, there's only actually 48 shapes you need to know. Just 48 2-point shapes, root note to interval, root note to interval, ascending or descending. And solo is designed to train this process. Yeah. So it shows you a chord, and then it asks you to play, I don't know, like whatever you can choose, but like the 1, the 3, the 5, and the 7, or the 1, the 2, the 3, and the 5. Yeah. And you have to find them and think in this number-based system. Yeah.
And you think you do the same as this, roughly?
I do roughly a similar version. I'm a user of the cage system. So what I would do is I would, like Tom is visualizing interval by interval, right? Note by note. And for me, that is the end goal as well. I've just been teaching a lot of like beginner to intermediate players over the years. And I found that for somebody to remember that this is a major third, and this is a major third, especially in standard tuning, and this is a major third, this is a major third, this is a major third, but also this, and also this, is too abstract. Yep. So what I tend to do is I tend to revolve my visualization around the open chord types. Like this would be, right, an A major type C chord, C major with an A type grip, if you want to see it like that. The advantage of that is I can teach my student to recognize the intervals within that chord. So we can have a root, a fifth, a root, third, fifth, and then I can tell them, well, you just have to add another third here.
Perfect. So this is much more how I mean, I'm 20 years older than you two, but I learned chord construction. So you would know from a bar chord where the third was, how to make it a minor third, how to make the fifth a sharp 5 on a flat 5, and that's pretty much I think what you're saying. But yours is losing the idea of the chord and more.
Yeah, because not that there's okay, so I feel like I'm not trying to compare or anything. For me, this is the most efficient way to visualize the fretboard, because what I find is if I hang things on large structures, I can't improvise with them. Whereas with thinking about small pieces of information, so I'm never, when I visualize intervals, in order for me to play a line over a chord, so like these 2-5-1s, so if I just go, you can hear the chord changes.
You're outlining the changes.
I'm outlining the changes. I find if I try and learn, like, let's say off a chord shape, a large arpeggio. By the way, I want to reiterate, this is not a comparison to Martin's thing. This is purely for me. Okay, this is the most efficient way I find to visualize the fretboard.
There's not one way of doing it.
No, exactly. Absolutely. This is what I find fascinating.
There's lots of different ways. So for some people this works. So what I found was I used to, like, maybe I was trying to play something like Autumn Leaves, and I'd sit and I would practice arpeggios like that. Right. Not like that, but that's just to get through them. When it came time to improvise, I would find it very, very difficult to create lines and melodies because all I could see was those large structures.
Right.
And I found it very difficult to connect them because I would visualize them from the lowest note to the highest note as one giant structure.
Okay.
Whereas if I'm thinking very small bits of information, so here's the 1, and around that 1 I can see the flat 3. It's always the same shape. I can see the flat 3 here. I can see the 5 down below. I can see the flat 7. Tiny, tiny bits of information. So if I just go... I find it much easier to think very small bits of information, and I don't have to think about it anymore, it's subconscious. And I can keep track of the chords as I'm going, and I'm not trying to tackle these giant, like picking notes out of these giant shapes. People can experience this if they know their minor pentatonic scale. People tend to find they play very specific licks, you know, all the classic, all that stuff. And then if you just give them free rein, they tend to play up and down the scale, or they play like quite boxy kind of things that are not particularly creative. That's what I found when I learned large arpeggio structures, you know, or chord voicings. My brain doesn't deal well with large bits of information. It deals well with very small bits of information that I can manipulate quickly. Okay. So that's why that system works for me.
Cool. Well, I don't think anyone would forgive me if I let you go without talking a little about legato.
Okay.
Have you ever been asked about that before?
No.
Okay. Well, you're no slouch on the legato stuff as well.
Not
so
at all.
Don't. Let's not go there.
Let me come to you. I first heard what I thought was, I'd heard Holdsworth, and I'll be honest with you, when I was first introduced to Holdsworth, it just didn't do it for me at all. It was like, I was way out of where I need to be. I remember an album called Quid Pro Quo.
Yeah,
Brett Garcia.
Yep, that's right. Amazing album. Yep.
And that was where I thought, at the time, that is something I want to try to figure out how to do.
Me too.
So, you took that, if I may say so, to the absolute nth degree. In terms
Disagree entirely.
No, well, I'm sorry.
No, that's very kind. Thank you.
You have this down now so that your, I call it your punctuation, so your timing, your efficiency, the actual dynamics of what you do is so fluid now. It's almost piano-like. It is almost piano-like. You must have set out to do that.
Yeah, I did.
You must have literally thought, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get this done.
Yeah, but that's interesting because my technique before going to do the jazz degree was very different. I wanted to be, well, first of all, I wanted to be a shredder, like a Petrucci-style shredder. Yeah. And then I wanted to be like a Pat Metheny-style guitar player, so I was working on time feel. So I was much more focused when I came out of Leeds College of Music on time. Yeah. And specifically like good time feel, so not just being inside. Yeah, exactly. Which is very hard to do with legato, and obviously it's a more like note-heavy subdivision-based thing. So when I started practicing legato, because I was so frustrated with my right hand, I was much more focused on time. Not like my picking technique kind of sucks because I just focused on speed and didn't focus on accuracy or, you know, how to be fluid with it and versatile. But the legato thing, I was actually much more mature when I practiced it. So I would sit and practice really specifically doing subdivisions and breaking the idea of the number of notes per string, specifying the subdivision or how the subdivision feels.
So
Because a lot of guitar players struggle with that. It's like the number of notes, say for instance, something like this. A lot of guitar players perceive that as being a group of 6, which it is. It's a group of 6. So this is always rhythmically the beginning of the phrase, and this is always the end of the phrase. Because physically it feels that way. It
doesn't give any weight to the notes in between.
But actually, to perceive that as 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1, the phrase rhythmically ends here. Now, I've had so many guitar players I've taught over the years. If I say, play me a bunch of 16th notes, a whole bar of 16th notes with this phrase and stop on beat 1 of the second bar. And they always add this note in at the end because physically it feels correct to do so. So what that tells me is there's no link between their rhythmic control and their technical control because they have to put that finger down. And so that's what I tried to break in my playing so that when you're perceiving those, you know, like, I don't know if you'll hear this because it's not going to be on the... 2, 3, 4. And that's really important to me in my playing. I mean, Brett does the same thing. Brett Garr said Alan Holdsworth didn't play like that so much, but he had a very saxophone-like sound unto himself. So, but that's what I call modern. I don't know why, but modern legato technique.
No, I think it is, and I think I think you developed it. I genuinely do. I Brett Gossett and those guys. I mean, don't get me wrong. I adore their stuff. I adore the Uncle Mo's Space Ranch stuff. It's just
It's awesome.
absolutely incredible. But I think you took that and absolutely nailed it and thought, okay, this is the way to do it. So, have you had a go at his?
I did try. Yeah, there's some.
And I've seen you do some legatos.
There's a video of me from like 2013 called Guitar Diary or something, where I was trying to correct these types of things, and I started. My playing was just getting worse the better I got at it, because it just moved me away from my natural strengths.
And I think that's actually why we worked so well together as a duo, because the right hand based. I mean, insane left hand obviously, but right hand based style. From a rhythmic perspective,
the right
that's
hand
the point.
tracks my rhythm.
Yep, whereas mine
the
is
left
the left hand. So the different styles meld together quite well.
And I don't think you need to be able to do it all. It's actually detrimental to a degree, because it
agreed,
waters down your style.
Yep.
Agreed, absolutely.
And your identifiability.
The thing I do like from when I'm blowing smoke up his ass because he's here, but the thing I like about Tom is he does have all the other stuff in his bag as well, which I particularly like when you reach into a little bit of standard jazz or blues or something, and then you let go with a few lines. I mean, that's cool. But I have seen you do this, and I have seen you cover such a myriad of different things. I think you are a very complete and very rounded guitar player.
I would say more than me.
In the bag that you can reach in for this and reach in for that. I'm going to go completely off piste now and pick up on a subject that I think is interesting, only because I saw an interview. Obviously, here at Scan Pro Audio, we're a division of Scan Computers. As a company, we've been involved in AI for the last 10 years or whatever. And AI at the moment is the buzzword. It's everywhere. People are scared to death. It's going to take their jobs. It's going to take their livings. It's going to destroy everything that is beautiful in the world. And yet, I watched the other night a really interesting facet of it, where these algorithms for improvisers were really quite cool. Now, Rick Beato did a fantastic thing the other week on AI writing songs and how you can't, it's a better country song than the country writers or whatever. What's really interesting for improvisers is if you ask it to play backing tracks for you, but then ask it to analyze what you're playing, and then, so for example, if you're playing straight, you've said before, I'm playing a straight sort of blues thing, then it'll keep it nice and, but if you start to infuse it with some
it follows you.
Yeah, so this is what they're trying to get it to. So it's listening in real
with
time.
Wow.
And so if you start to play something with a little more harmonic sophistication, it will start to develop the backing track to do it. Now that, however long it is away, I think
that's cool,
is very cool. Yeah?
It's kind of like a chatbot, isn't it?
Yeah,
I have a conversation with something that
Exactly.
imposes to be, or poses to be a human being.
But I'm sorry, I took that off on a tangent. How do you feel about the whole AI in music thing, or AI in general?
Oh, that's such a broad. What aspect of AI in
Well,
music?
okay, let's do the music thing, because it is the one thing that I know a lot of people are terrified about. I know a lot of people that genuinely say.
But even within music, I mean, that sounds like a fun thing. That sounds fun and harmless and educational.
Well, I'm kind of with the Peter Gabriel thing. You jump in the river and swim with it. If you try and go against this,
well, you're not going to stop it, are you? That's for sure.
But you can carve your niche by denying to use it.
Yeah, and also I wonder whether a little bit like, you take anything, like for instance, Japanese knife craft, people making insane cooking knives, for example. You can go to any store and buy a cooking knife that's perfectly acceptable at chopping through whatever you need it to. Yeah. But there are a bunch of guys who make these incredible artisan knives that are still very much desired because they are made at that level. So I wonder if there's going to be a thing where basically musicians will survive to some, well, not to some extent, they'll survive because people want the handcrafted thing over the AI.
Organic meats from the local farmer versus the supermarket.
And I think that's where the live thing will come in. I think
live, definitely.
will really start to come back, because there is absolutely nothing like watching what we watched before, you two guys interacting with each other.
A hologram, but yeah.
Well, they did that with ABBA, didn't
With
they?
ABBA, yeah, and Zappa, I think too, right?
Yep, that's right. Yep, video, yeah.
But the beauty of it is being able to watch the mistakes and the flangers and the...
Yeah, and actually, you and I have become, we have started to, not enjoy is the wrong word, but embrace and accept those mistakes way more than we used to.
Yeah.
And not be worried about them. It's part of the whole thing, you know. It's just be chilled about it.
For the intro, when we played Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic, we just played it a little faster for fun. We've never done that before.
Nope.
Just take the plunge, see what happens, you know.
Well, that's probably a good place to leave it. You two are wonderful musicians, wonderful guitar players, and it's been an absolute pleasure having you here at Scampro.
Thanks for having us.
Martin Miller, Tom Quayle.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.